highly undervalued stock I bought this week was Starbucks. Starbucks has been through the ringer this year between boycotts all over TikTok and supposedly low growth in China. Starbucks just cannot catch a break, and it's actually down year to date, negative 5.53%. To put that into perspective, SPY, or the S&P 500, is up 7.73% yield to date. So it is paling in comparison. And if we look at the max right over here, it looks like it's in a support area. Like, it's still trending up, which is very nice, but it also is showing that it is in a dip. But obviously we have a lot of all-time growth, which is good to see for one of our growth companies. This is what we want to see. We want to see it go up when it's going off to the right. And make sure whatever stock that you buy, that it does have at least a 10-year track record. We need to make sure that the fundamentals are there. The Starbucks CEO basically blamed three headwinds for the disappointing results in Q1, which was war in the Middle East, weakening its local licensee sales, misperceptions in the US over the company's stance on the Israel-Hamas war, and a more cautious consumer in China. So basically, people are boycotting because of the company's supposed stance on the war, and also because of the geopolitical tension in the Middle East that's weakening its local licensee. So be very prepared for volatility and turbulence in the stock price if we hear any more news surrounding this. So very much in the Middle East, they do have a big presence there, so it will impact the stock price. And then again, there's a perception about the consumer in China is weak. We saw that as well in Tesla's reported earnings when we saw that China growth was not very good for EVs as well. And I'm seeing that along the lines of every company that's in China, so it's not just for Starbucks. Executives also tried to convey that those challenges are expected to subside as fiscal 2024 progresses. So they're saying that these are short-term headwinds, to not worry about it, so they can clarify their position and they can stop with the boycotts and just have overall more growth for the year. While Starbucks lowered its full year outlook for revenue and same-store sales growth, it reiterated its forecast for fiscal 2024 earnings per share growth. Honestly, that's what I took out of the Q1 earnings, was that despite all of these headwinds, the numerous FUD that is happening with all of these articles all over TikTok, that it's basically just deployed to help unionize the workers. You know, they have a wonderful brand. They have brand loyalty. You cannot have enough coffee. And what do you think of coffee? You think of Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. And while these are difficulties, I think that there's actually another reason that the stock price is down as well, and we'll get into that in the next part. To make matters worse, Starbucks has been in a standoff with its employees for a whole year, and this is basically where I think that the stock price is getting pounded on, because it is trying to have standoffs with unionizing. So it's a Starbucks and union restart contract talks after bitter standoff. The company and Workers United, which represents more than 10,000 of the chain's employees, broke off negotiation nearly a year ago. And we have just been seeing the stock price go down for mostly the whole year. And I think it does have a lot to do with the unions. But 2 days ago, this article came out, and I think it's very important. Represents over 10,000 of its workers returned to the bargaining table on Wednesday for the first time in nearly a year, a pivotal moment in the year-long battle between the coffee giant and its organized workers. And both sides are basically saying that they're very excited about this, and they're excited about the future, and it's very positive. The union is asking for higher wages and better safety standards, among other issues. Once the two sides agree on an overall framework, individual contracts will be put up. The separate contracts will allow the company and workers to raise issues that may vary by region or type of store, so it will be very individual. So this is very good news for Starbucks, and as I said, I think this was a short-term headwind. I think that a lot of the stock price was baked into this, as there have been many boycotts because of the unionization. There also is another struggle, which I will talk about later. So I'm very excited about this, very hopeful that the negotiations will go well. So now that we've looked at all of these short-term headwinds, let's look at the financials and see if there's been any material impact to the cash flow from all of this negativity. So we're going to look at macro trends and we're going to see the 10-year trend. We want to look at least 10 years of data to see the overall trend and just make sure that everything is going smoothly and that the company is growing, because if we want to hold this for the long term, we need to know what the financials are doing in the long term. The first thing we want to look at is the revenue from 2010 to 2023. Revenue for the quarter was $9.42 billion, a 8% increase year over year. Trailing 12 months was $36.68 billion, 11% increase year over year. And I love to see this. The trailing 12 month is just increasing. The revenue has just been going up and it looks like it's almost 4x'd. So let's look at net income, because this is what the company's net profit or loss is after all the revenues, income items, and expenses have been accounted for. So for the quarter ending, it was $1.02 billion and 19.78% increase year over year. Trailing 12 months is $4.29 billion, a 29% increase year over year. And if we look at the trend of the trailing 12 months, it did have a little bit of turbulence. It looks like it has some turbulence throughout the years, but mostly it has been going up, 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 up and away. The shares outstanding was a 1.07% decline year over year. Beautiful. So the outstanding shares are just decreasing overall. That is beautiful. We love to see that because it means that we get a bigger portion of the pie as shareholders. Another thing that I love to see is the gross margin, because it basically means what are they getting from their profits? How much are they making? If this trend is going to go yep, and it goes up and to the right. That is just beautiful. So here we have the gross profit, gross revenue, and gross margin, and it is just going up, 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 up. It did experience better margins in 2019, but then you know what hit. But it's been going on an uptrend ever since, which is what we want to see when it comes to gross margins. And it looks like this is a pretty rational margin. And Starbucks has a very solid dividend yield at 2.57%. It is in a lot of the dividend ETFs because it is growing its dividend. It's doing a very good job with that, and it has a reasonable yield. So with all of the headlines, why am I buying this company for my long-term portfolio? And as you could see, basically the story that they're telling right now, which I believe are short-term headwinds, Starbucks is mostly in the United States for right now. So even if it is in the Middle East, which they are trying to ramp up and grow, I believe that they'll still be able to do that. They have a really good management system, and they'll just be able to grow more in the United States or pivot to another region if they need to. But I don't think they will. I think that negotiations will be great as far as the licensings go. I think they have a really good team and management behind them to figure that out. Also, as far as the boycotting goes or the unionization, as we saw with the article, I think that they're in negotiations with that and they're in a positive light. They have very good brand loyalty. And as I said, I think it's interesting because it's definitely a cross-generational stance. So Starbucks, the corporate people, the Starbucks moms, they might not love the taste of it, but they love the convenience of it. And they love that they can get customized coffees using their hidden menu and using their customizations to get hooked on Starbucks loyalty. And I think that's a very good move with management. But as I mentioned before, I do think there's something else that is causing this stock to sell off. And it is this chart right here. Let's look at the 10-year. Now, this is from Trading Economics. This is the coffee bean price. And as you can see, there are so many commodities that are just going all the way up, that have been going up within the past year. You can see that 2024 was at about 180. And now it's all the way up to 229 with, it's just inflation prices. Yay. This is the 1 year. It's just spiked like crazy. I'm not saying that this is its all-time high, but we haven't seen this in a very long time. So I think this is what's spooking the market as far as Starbucks goes, because once these prices go up, it's a really good indication that Starbucks will have to gather more costs and will get more costs because coffee beans are very pricey right now. If we keep getting higher inflation, they're just going to keep going higher. So this is another thing just to look out again for short term. If there is more inflation and inflation is kind of sticky right now, then the stock price may go down because the commodity of coffee beans are just spiking higher. But again, I believe that this is short term. I believe we will get to a point where inflation will slow down. We will be getting rate cuts at some point, and Starbucks will just continue to go up and commodity prices will go down. And not only that, but their brand and their customers are so loyal that they can just pass on the costs. The customers that they have are either in the corporate world or they're the influencers who are like, I just want a really special drink. They're not very much looking at, oh, let me get the least expensive thing. So they're able to increase and move along their costs onto the consumer. So I don't think this is a big problem. This is one that I am currently buying. Please let me know below if you agree with this, if you see any other headwinds or any other tailwinds, because I think there are a lot of tailwinds coming into the next 10 years with Starbucks. So I'm very excited to own this one, and I love their coffee. Like, they got me hooked, line, and sinker.